Hey y'all, welcome to part 2, the last part of the story. In case you're familiar, let me drop in the disclaimer again. I need you to know that this story contains depictions of suicide, depression, and mild sexual tension, but not much of it really. Well, it's still there. If you're still here with me, I need to be very explicitly open about this, that this is not my story, and I didn't change anything about it. I didn't alter it. Absolutely no percent of it belongs to me. It was written by It's Real for us on WattPad, and I really want you guys to go to their page and vote on the chapters of the story, as it's not fair technically if I do this and they don't really get anything from this. I'll be leaving the WattPad and the link in the description below, so please check that out. And because they put a lot of effort into adding imagery and playing with the layout of fonts, so just the perfect way to make the story very enjoyable, to actually read and experience it the way it was intended to be experienced. I myself just read the title and the first 2 lines of the story, and right away I kind of knew that it was going to be a great story and I wanted to share it with you. So I recorded this on the go with no knowledge of the ending, and yeah, this one's pretty sad, not gonna lie. Caught me by surprise in several parts. Had to re-record some bits, but we're here now. So, great, touching story. I enjoyed this. Thank you, It's Real for us, for this beautiful contribution to the Drarry community. Most respect to you, and I hope I'll do your story justice with the way I'll be reading it out for my audience today. If you ever do find out about this video, let me know. I'll be curious to find out. And with that, let's get into the final part, part 2. It was a normal day. It passed by slowly as I awaited the night with anticipation. Sometimes I felt like it was the only thing I lived for. I wanted Malfoy. All of him. Everything. I watched the hours drag on slowly until nightfall hit. I put on my best green button-down shirt that brought out my eyes and glanced into the mirror sheepishly. I still could not say I loved my reflection, but it was gonna have to be good enough. I just hoped it was good enough for him, too. That was all that truly mattered to me. I waited along the entrance of the forest for what seemed like hours. Malfoy had never been so late. I started to question what was going on, if I had gone too far. If I had told him just too much about my feelings for him. I began to go over everything in my head, most of all if he had actually felt the same longing as I did for him. I started to believe that this was all a big mistake, that I screwed up the one remaining and most important bond I had. I could feel the air becoming thick again, but it was not because he was not here. The air was just smart enough to know what was about to come. Malfoy suddenly appeared from the shadows. He had just come out of the forest himself. I sighed in disbelief, not understanding why he had gone into the forest alone without me. Why hadn't he gotten me if he was there the whole time? I asked myself, but Malfoy did not say a word. He turned his back and walked into the forest as he did every night prior. I followed him, hoping and praying he would give me some kind of explanation, but he did not. The walk felt endless. We walked past the park. We had never done that before. I would have usually questioned it, but I just continued behind him. It just felt like I should. We walked until we arrived at a small opening between all the pine trees. I stayed silent as he turned around and looked at me. His eyes were so dark, more than I had ever seen. They were so metallic, shock and gray. I had never seen them such a color. It scared me. I felt my trembling extremities come back. He looked at me and outstretched his fingertips to mine. I hesitated to grab his hand at first, but I did. I felt a jolt of energy as our fingertips intertwined. I had held hands with 2 or 3 girls before, but this was all-encompassing. Everything felt heavy all of a sudden, but not in a bad way. It was love that was weighing hard and passionately down on me. He looked into my eyes, and I could see the care more than ever now. Even through the twilight of his regard, there was so much love. I knew he was questioning his every movement as well, if he should do this or that, or if he should even proceed altogether. Overpoweringly so, I felt want and need overcome him like a swift snowy downpour. He grabbed me by the hand and pulled me flush to him. It was all fast until our chests collided. With another brief moment of hesitation and fear wrapped into a tiny bow, he halted his actions, thinking about what he should do next. Before I could say anything, his expression changed, looking into my eyes deeper. He cupped one of his hands around my jaw and the other my cheek. I couldn't help but shake under his hold more than I thought was ever physically possible. My cheeks flushed carmine. He pressed his warm lips against my cold ones. Momentarily, I forgot everything. Our lips moved in an awkward but familiar trance as if they had always known each other. I knew I could not let go now that I had started. I pushed him delicately onto the tree behind him and rubbed my body against his slim figure. Shivers crawled up and down my spine as I deepened the kiss, begging and pleading for him to give in to me more. Some part of me, a very small part, could feel his resistance and knew that something was wrong. This kiss did not feel like a beginning, but rather an end. I refused to consider the thought long. I was too enthralled to let go. I was finally happy. I was finally at peace. I let my tongue explore his mouth as he moaned into the kiss. It was quiet and raspy at first, but it grew louder and hungrier with time. It had been so many years since our feelings had first begun to sprout, when we were not even full-grown ourselves. We had tried to hide for so long, to pretend it did not exist, all of secondary school hating each other, when we could have been loving instead. For a split second, even if believing in destiny meant I would have to believe that we lost the wizarding war for a reason, I did. I also was smart enough to know the reality that no matter how many kilometers separated us, no matter the change of our worlds we faced, no matter how many years were spread in between, I had found my way back to Malfoy, and he had found his way back to me. I felt his body squirm under my touch as I pulled away from the kiss. His cheeks now had splashes of Gryffindor colors all over them. They were deep crimson, just like mine. He seemed so happy but so broken. All at once, I could feel that something really was not right as a pit formed in my stomach muscles. "What's wrong?" I asked, not wanting to actually know the answer. "Live in the moment, Potter. Do it. For me," he pleaded. I could feel the tears beginning to well up in my eyes. I started to think about everything, started to question it all. Malfoy would not say that unless it was something actually grave, actually bad. I knew that he would not have kissed me all at once and so passionately straight from the start if everything was okay. He would have been slower, but these kisses were too demanding, too wanting. It was as if every single emotion was poured into them, as if every bit of love he needed to be inside that one kiss. "Malfoy," I uttered, cut off by the blonde's lips pressing fervently against mine once more. I wanted to ask him what was going on, but I could not like this. His lips were like drugs, and I was an addict. He melted into me even deeper this time, letting his tongue explore every crevice of my mouth. I began to moan heavily into the kiss, asking for more. Malfoy opened my button-down shirt and kissed along my jawline to my neck. He knew what he was doing to me. He knew how weak I was becoming. But he did not stop. It only drove him over the edge. He listened to my whines and kissed my neck the more I wanted him. It was like a never-ending cycle. Malfoy left indents and marks all over and down my throat to my chest, each making me say his name. I was more in love than summer was with the sun, than autumn was with its leaves, than winter was with its snowflakes, and even more than spring was with its budding flowers. "Draco," I said, forcing myself for the first time in my life to call him by his given name. I could see blue trying to fight its way back into his hidden Atlantic eyes, but something was refusing him, stopping him. I could feel the thumping of his chest against mine. His heart was going haywire, mad for me. "Harry," he whispered, crying out the name that he had been bottling up inside him for what seemed like forever. I could feel his erection press up against my own, but the ocean that was his eyes welled up with salt water that swam down his high-raised cheekbones. Draco backed away and extended his hand to mine once more. I was scared to take it, but I did. I knew I had no other choice. He walked further and further into the forest, in places that were still unknown to my eyes. He turned left, and then right, and then left, knew every curvature, every tree in his passing. I knew that somehow he knew this forest more than I had first believed. My heart kept palpitating in my chest quickly, a mixture of love and fear. I watched as we got deeper into the abyss of trees that was the forest. We gently arrived at the bay of the sea. The wind was strong here, almost demanding us to leave, but we did not. I watched Malfoy as he deliberately walked straight into the water. I did not say a word. I just watched endlessly, not knowing what my eyes were about to see. He continued in until he was completely submerged. His white, blonde, silvery locks gleamed in the moonlight, twinkling behind him until I could no longer see him. I began to question what I was doing. Why am I watching the man I love go underwater? It is because, in the depths of my soul, I know something is happening. Malfoy's head slowly resurfaced after a moment. He began to walk towards me again. I could see something weighing heavily down in his arms, even if I could not see what it was at first. The closer he got, the clearer the image became. My heart stopped. It was a body. I could not see who it was, if it was female or male, but my stomach began to rumble. My heart was trying to find a way to lunge out of my chest for me, and my eyes were screaming to look away. I knew I could not. I suddenly was close enough to see. My eyes became wide in fear and confusion that was not really an unsureness, because I knew the answer to my question, even if I did not want to be right for once. The body had been almost perfectly kept. The cold, ashen skin, the gray, dying to be blue eyes, the snowy hair, the sharp jawline, it was all too much. I was glancing down at the love of my life. It was Draco. Lifeless. Gone. I don't understand. I sobbed and screamed in pain. I could see Draco's orbs let go of more salt water. He knew how much he was hurting me, but he was hurting himself too. How is this possible? I wailed. Draco parted his lips, but all the words he tried to say were not coming out. Let me explain, he cried, trying again to speak. I looked into his eyes and fell to my knees. He slowly sat down, his body still in his hands. I had never, in all of my life, felt more heartbroken than I did now. How could this be happening? How could it all feel so real, but not be? After the war, when we were all faced with the choice to stay or go, we decided to go. Astoria and I tried making a life for ourselves in the Muggle world. Draco continued to weep as I listened, wondering why the world was constantly so unfair. Everything was fine. At first we got married, tried to pretend our surroundings did not exist. She got pregnant. Everything seemed to be perfect, but we were just two young kids. We were purebloods in a world that was not ours. We had never been a part of the Muggle one. We simply did not fit in. Draco sighed in between tears. Everyone else seemed to be making their way, even if it was slowly. Things got better after Scorpius was born. I finally felt at peace, happier, but then he got sick with cancer. I could not stop it. No magic in the world. I saw him suffer for months on end, my only son. I could not take it anymore. This world was not mine, and the only thing that made it better was going to die. Draco bawled. I could see that he felt like he could not continue, but I edged him on, needing to know what happened, why he too was now gone. It was in late December when the doctors told me Scorpius died in his sleep. I had been at home with Astoria because she had the flu. I never got to say goodbye. I blamed her for not being able to say my last words to our son. It ruined her, broke her, it drove a stake between us. We divorced. My life no longer had a reason to keep going. Draco, I cried. I came to you. I came to you because even though we had been enemies in Hogwarts, you were the first person I wanted to see. You were the only person I knew could maybe make me want to live. You did? It was 4 years and 31 days after the war. I asked every wizard I still had contact with where you were. All of them had no idea. They said that the great Harry Potter didn't want to be found. They knew you blamed yourself for the destruction of our world, but they didn't. They had seen you almost die trying, and that made them more grateful than you could ever imagine. Stop, I said, not wanting to hear what I thought were lies. It's true. I went to your house. I found you when I finally had the idea to ask them where Hermione was. She had married a muggle 2 hours away. She and Ron had left each other because no wizards felt right together anymore. I asked her where you were, and I told her why I needed you. I needed someone's opinion. She told me that I needed to find you, to never give up, to always keep searching for that love that I talked so highly about. She never told me, I sobbed, upset that she would keep something so important away from me. She didn't tell you because I only wanted her opinion, you see, and to know where you were. I obliviated her mind afterwards. It was late at night when I found you. I walked up to the doorstep of your house, not knowing exactly what I would say or do, but then I saw Ginny wrapping her arms around you as you guys danced. I knew that I could not be that selfish. I knew that your happiness meant more to me than fulfilling my own. Either way, I knew you loved her. But I wasn't with Ginny then. She had only come to make amends, for closure. We were dancing to what would have been the wedding song we had chosen right before leaving Hogwarts once and for all, I sobbed. I came to know that too late, Draco whimpered, tears spilling down his visage more and more. What happened? I asked. I really did not want to hear this, but it was not about want, it was about need. I went to the only place that felt like home. I let the forest push and pull me like gravity one last time. I let the feeling set me at ease as I walked to the bay, wind in my hair, the most alive I had felt in a long time. I walked into the bay. I let the moonlight shine against my pale skin as I felt the heaviness of my clothes drag me downwards. I didn't stop it. I took my wand out and looked at it, remembering the world I was born into. I grazed my thumb on its soft edges and used magic to put weights at my feet. I let the wind, moon, and water take me as an old friend. Draco, no, you can't be dead, I cried. Why are you even here then? It has to be a mistake. I cried so much I could no longer even see him standing before me. My vision went utterly blurry. Harry, I came back because I could not settle in the afterlife. I was always stuck in the in-between. I needed you to know, even if it was the last thing I'd ever say in my time alive, and it truly would be the last thing I'd say. I needed to say it, he cried. Don't. You can't. It's not true. But it is. I love you, Harry Potter. He said as he touched my face with one of his hands and held his body in the other. Draco, I love you too. So much, I replied. I could not forgive the world for being so unfair, so unkind, so unjust. How is that when I finally feel at ease, that I discover the greatest person I've ever encountered is gone, is dead? Draco stood up, looked at me one last time as he placed his cold, unearthly nimble fingertips in my hair and turned towards the bay that went out to sea. He walked in the water once more and let it submerge him until he was no longer, until he too was just a memory of a love short-lived. I had never been made for this universe, this Muggle one. It took me long enough to realize it, but now I knew. It had never been my home. I was not able to make a life for myself here. It did not feel right. It did not feel like home. I did not go to the forest for weeks after the last time I saw him, the love of my life, Draco Malfoy. I could not bring myself to go. It was too hard, too difficult. I had loved him with all of me, and it had consumed me. It had been me, not just a part of me. The love I had for him had grown in me ever since I was a little boy, screaming to get out. His blonde locks and marvelous eyes had always made me weak. They had always captured me in a way that nobody else was able to. It did not matter if I barely ever got to live it. It had been the truest thing I had ever felt, more than magic itself. I walked outside late at night, wondering if I would be able to finally go back to where I last saw him. I grazed at the forest. The wind was so strong, even stronger than the night I had discovered the truth. I could not keep straight and steady. I glided my feet to the entrance. I shut my eyes, picturing the Slytherin man I loved, and opened them again. There he stood, Draco Malfoy, standing there waiting for me. I knew it was only my eyes and mind playing tricks on me, but I did not care whatsoever. I followed him, as I had so many nights for months, past all the trees, the park, and all the way to the bay. I let myself feel the forest push me and force me to stay in place like gravity. His words echoed in my memory to never's end. Can you feel it? The gravity pushing and pulling you to stay trapped in the forest, just so you can feel at ease, just so you can feel home. Sighed, his words lit a fire in my heart. Can you feel it? I asked. No, not today, but I used to once. Everything made sense now, all of his unusual responses. I turned as Draco stopped and looked at me, as if to say, do not do this. I gulped down and felt almost too real not to be actually him. Nevertheless, I had already made my decision. There was no turning back now. This world was not mine, but a world in which he was. I took off my shoes and let my toes touch the moonlight shimmering water. I already felt him somehow, the true him. I walked in not thinking about anything but everything all at once. I let my clothes weigh heavy like his. I looked up into the night sky and saw freckled constellations. He was amongst the heavens, I was sure of it. He was up there dashing in all of his glory, and I was about to be amongst him. I allowed myself the possibility to feel the world once more around me. I heard Draco's laughter. I saw his eyes speak. His heart showed me he was ready to love me. I tied weights to the end of my feet with my wand and let myself die slowly, but most of all bravely. It was what I wanted. It was what was right. My body languidly but peacefully hit the sands beneath me as I laid at forever's rest. That was when I saw him, his white pale body so effortlessly beautiful laying next to mine. I did not know what to think, except for the fact that I had made the right choice. I loved him. He loved me. This would be our forever in a world that was ours. I intertwined my fingertips in his. I felt the pressure of his hand squeezing mine. Life had come back, but this time in a different way. For death is but the next great adventure. Albus Dumbledore.